Uhura from Star Trek. If anyone, Star Trek fans in here? Probably not. Okay, creating competitive advantage. We will hear the word competitive advantage over and over and over and over again, so we might as well get just used to seeing it. It is probably defined at least in 3 different chapters. So I try to stay with pretty much with the flow of each chapter. So if it's repetitious, I apologize, but sometimes repetition is a good learning tool. So we're going to see it a lot. So how organizations create competitive advantage, explain the variation of competitive advantage across different markets. We'll look at factors that drive the evolution of industry. And also look at various levels of strategy. We've covered a couple, but there are actually 5 levels. There's corporate, business, functional, network, and global. And we'll kind of look at each of those. Each of them, particularly network and functional, are somewhat different than corporate and business. We'll spend more time on corporate and business strategy. Network strategy is basically, if you think of networking with other people, that's what network strategy is. So when we talk about companies' network strategy, it means how they network with their suppliers, their competitors, how they network with other businesses, customers, or sometimes they joint ventures you've probably heard of, alliances. All of that falls within networks, okay? And we'll talk about that. In fact, there's a separate chapter on that as well. We'll look at low-cost leadership and differentiation and examine how technology can be used as a source for competitive advantage. If there is one issue, one element that always trumps everything else in competitive advantage, one thing, anybody know what it would be? I just mentioned it. It's technology, okay? Technology trumps almost everything else, okay? So the company that has state-of-the-art technology, or the company that stays current with technology, normally technology immediately gives you some level of competitive advantage, okay? Some level, okay? It's a very important part of strategy, okay? So emergence of competitive advantage, what is it? 2 or more companies compete within the same market. Competitive advantage is a condition that enables a company to operate in a more efficient or responsive manner than its competitors. So I'm more efficient, or I'm quicker in responding to customer needs. That gives me a competitive advantage. And that results in higher potential to earn a persistently higher rate of profit. That's one definition. According to Grant. Grant is the writer of your book. Competitive advantage results from the value of the organization can create for its customers through strategic application of core competencies. Did we talk about core competencies yet? We will. An organization gains competitive advantage when it outperforms its competitors in attracting customers. So really what competitive advantage is all about is not so much what I make, but who I sell it to. All right? Competitive advantage means I've got your customers, you don't. That's competitive advantage. All right? Now, competitive advantage may be leveraged. We may leverage competitive advantage through technology. We may leverage it through our inputs from our supply. Okay? We may leverage it through our in process or throughput. We may leverage competitive advantage on the output side, either through customers, delivery systems, distributorships. So there's a lot of different ways. Cost, a lot of ways of leveraging competitive advantage. But what it basically boils down to is how many customers I have. Okay, and that depends on inputs, throughputs, and outputs. Did we talk about inputs and outputs? Yeah, I thought so. Okay. So when we look at competitive advantage from change is a big part of competitive advantage. If we don't change, and let's back up. We mentioned this probably our first class. When we talk about strategy, okay, if you implement a strategy, that means you also have to implement a change. Because if you change a process through strategy, if your strategy is changing a process or identifying different customers or identifying new ways of doing things, that strategy means I have to have some kind of a change implementation in my place of employment, okay? So they look at two things. They look at the ability for a company to change. So what kind of resources, capabilities, and differentiation does the company have? The ability to change. And then they look at response to change. How quickly can I change? So do I have the ability to change, and how quickly can I change? And those two factors together are what can establish competitive advantage. So speed of response, cycle time, disseminating information, flexibility, all of that is response to change. So I may have to change in order to get my product to market faster, speed of response. And to do that, I have to have a shorter cycle time. If anybody's in manufacturing, anybody know what a cycle time is? Okay. Yeah, yes. The cycle time starts from the input and it ends at the output. So the time it takes me to get raw product through my process and get it out to my customer, that is a cycle time, okay? So if I shorten that cycle time, then I'm getting my product to my customer faster. That's what we're talking about. And I'm being more cost efficient. And then, of course, flexibility is also important to respond to change. So some companies aren't flexible enough to change. And when we talk about flexibility, flexibility can be one of two things. It can be physical flexibility, the ability to actually do it, or flexibility can be mental. Okay? What does that mean? How can flexibility be a mental situation? Yes? Yeah. Yeah. Open-mindedness. Yeah. Is my management and my employees, are they open to change? Are they flexible enough to be able to change their jobs, change process, accept new training methods? And you know, some people are not. So when we're talking about change, it's not so much our ability to change. We may have the ability, but we may not have the responsiveness. So that's why when we do implement a change management process from strategy, the first thing we have to do is make sure that we communicate it, okay, and that we get employees to buy into it. Because if we don't, they're going to be inflexible. Okay? Does that make sense? I hope so. So now we're going to look at innovation. And we've talked about innovation. We've covered that before, even in some of my other classes. Innovation. Internal change is generated through innovation. Innovation can be a basis for overturning competitive advantage. So if I don't have competitive advantage and I start to institute more innovative practices in my organization, I can gain back competitive advantage. Innovation is typically thought of in more of the technical side. When we think of innovation, we always think of technology. But it's applicable to new products, processes that result from new ideas and new knowledge. So it's not always technology. It can also be process-driven, okay? So we may have someone, maybe, I don't know, an industrial engineer who figures out a much faster way of getting raw material through the throughput process, maybe by eliminating certain functions or combining certain functions or shortening the process or maybe through more automation, okay? And all of that is innovative thinking, all right? So it may not just be technology, okay? It can be just somebody who is very creative with process and ideas. Innovation also includes new approaches to doing business. Strategic innovation creates value for customers, okay? And that value is created by novel experiences. What does that mean? Customers read a book? What is, that's not spelled the same. What is a novel experience? When we talk about, see, in your Australian material, they use the word novel, okay? But what they're really talking about in our language is uniqueness. Unique, okay? Something that's unique, okay? Customers like unique things, unique services, unique products, something that's more creative, Here they use the word novel, okay? I took that from the book. That's why we use that word. Also, strategic innovation creates value from products, from product delivery. Sometimes just delivery, okay, can basically create value for a customer. So if a customer is waiting for something to finish, maybe the customer, our customer, is also a supplier to someone else. So they need our product to finish it off and sell it to someone else. So product delivery and delivery time is very important to our customer, okay? That's where they may get value from. The other one, of course, is bundling. What's bundling? Anybody know? I don't know if we discussed bundling. We'll get into it again later. Bundling is basically adding two things together for one product, okay? Kind of like, Yeah. Well, I was going to use something even real simple. Okay. As an example, I go into Lulu's. Lulu's loves to use bundling. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I was going to say, if I go into Lulu's and I'm looking to buy a 6-pack of Coca-Cola, all right? And they have a special bundling offer. You get a 6-pack of Coca-Cola, and then they taped to it is a bottle of dishwashing liquid. That's kind of bundling. So I look at that and I said, I really don't need Coca-Cola right now. I still have some at home, but I am getting a little low on dishwashing liquid. It's a stupid thing level. Microsoft, okay? When they sell, and this is going to come up later as an example, but we'll use it now. When Microsoft sells their operating system, they bundle it with Internet Explorer. Yeah, they also sometimes antivirus too. But they bundle it with Internet Explorer. That's a bundled package. So when you buy the Microsoft operating system, you get Internet Explorer with it. Now, to Microsoft, that makes a lot of sense. Okay? But that's one of the things that got them in trouble. They were sued by Netscape. Because Netscape said, hey, wait a minute. You're bundling your operating system plus you're giving them Internet Explorer, and that's shutting us out of the market. Yeah, well, all's fair. That's competition. Okay? So those are examples of what we call bundling. So to a customer, and you always have to remember, value is not something we establish. Okay? Value is established by whom? The customer. Yeah. So what we do has to be of value to them. All right? And value is sometimes just again, we talk about the mental side. Value may just be a perception. It's the difference between, I don't know if I mentioned it before. To a customer, I need to buy a car. So I have a couple of choices. I get a BMW or I can buy a Toyota Corolla. Now, to some customers, the value is with the BMW. Why? Well, it's got a bigger name, bigger brand. It's got more of a mystique about it. I feel really good driving my BMW around. Everybody looks at me. Whereas if I'm just driving a Toyota Corolla, I'm just like any other taxi cab, okay? So it's a perceptual value. But to the person who just needs good, reliable transportation to get to work every day, wants a small car, it's easy to get around town, park, and so on, maybe they say, you know what, for me, there's more value in the Toyota. I don't have to worry about somebody bumping it, or I don't have to worry about it's too big to get into a parking space, or it burns too much gas, or whatever the case, okay? So value is in the eyes of the, as we say, the beholder here being the customer, all right? Make sense? Good. Drucker, Peter Drucker, he's another gentleman that we see frequently in all our materials in the MBA program, okay? Peter Drucker comes up a lot. Michael Porter comes up a lot. Mintzberg comes up a lot with all their theories that give us all major headaches. And then we have Peter Drucker. He came up with 7 sources of innovation, creativity, innovation, okay? You don't need to know these for your exam, by the way. That's the good news. So, number one is the unexpected. How can the unexpected be a source of innovation? We'll get to that in a minute. We'll look at these first. Incongruity, process need, industry or market structure change, demographics, changes in perception, and again, there's that perception thing again, okay? Mood and meaning, or new knowledge. And then I always try to give you the little tickers next to it so there's a better explanation. So, the unexpected, an unexpected success or failure, okay? It's almost like I created innovation by accident. And I'll give you the perfect example of this. Years ago, there was a chemist, and the chemist was kind of a chemist R&D person, and he was working for the 3M company. And 3M, he was working on developing a new type of adhesive, okay? Something that would be very strong. And his process and his experiment and his creation of this new adhesive was a total failure. Because when they put it on a piece of paper and they put the piece of paper on the wall, it pulled right off. What did he create? Through innovation, the unexpected. Put adhesive on the back of a piece of paper, he put a piece of paper on the wall, and the piece of paper just peels right off. It doesn't stick to the wall. Anybody here have a Post-it note? That's how Post-it notes were invented. It was an accident. It was actually a failed adhesive that was actually so innovative, it opened up a huge door to 3M and the Post-it note industry. And how many people here use Post-it notes at one time or another, okay? So everybody knows what they are, right? Okay. So that's how Post-it notes were invented. The unexpected. It was actually a failed chemistry experiment, okay, that wound up to be a huge success. So you never know. Incongruity is leveraging the variance between reality and perceived or assumed reality. So we want to leverage, and what perceived reality can be that of a customer versus assumed reality. Okay. Unfortunately, I don't have an example of that. I had one, but I forgot what it was. Process need is process deficiency leads to solutions. So if I have a deficiency in my process and I solve it, the deficiency is what led to the solution, and that becomes more innovative, according to Mr. Drucker. Industry or market changes, adapt to market or industry niches through innovation. And what's a niche? Does anybody know what a niche is? Is that when you have to scratch a niche? No, that's a niche. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, it's like a niche is like a little opening in a market that nobody's really servicing, okay? You got a lot of people servicing this side of the market, and a lot of people are serving this side of the market, but there's a little spot in there that's kind of open. We call that a niche, okay? It's kind of like product segmentation, all right? So if I'm selling toothpaste, and I'm selling toothpaste to a 30 to 40-year-old group, and then I have another group that I'm selling toothpaste to in the maybe 45 to 65 group. Where's my niche? Young people. I'm not even addressing them. So that's a market niche. That's what we're talking about. So when you have niches, okay, that can lead to innovation, okay? Or innovation can open the niche. Demographics, adapting to population changes, and when we hear demographics, we're always talking about age, income, the size, education, composition of the market, and so on, okay? Changes in perception. What opportunities develop when society's general assumptions and attitudes and beliefs change? So, does society, now I'm not talking about values here, we're talking about assumptions and beliefs. does societies in general, society's assumptions and beliefs, do they have a tendency to change over time? What do you think? Yeah. That wasn't hard to answer. Everybody's saying, I don't know if I want to answer that. Yeah. The beliefs of society have a tendency to change. Sometimes they go from more conservative beliefs to more liberal beliefs. I mean, if you go back 1,000 years, society believed the earth was flat. Did that change? Sure. So their assumptions and their beliefs change over time. So that can be leveraged for innovation. New knowledge has produced many opportunities for new products. So as we gain new knowledge, there's room for innovation. Because a lot of people think, oh, you know what, there's nothing left in the world that can be invented. There's no need for innovation anymore. Is that true? Have we pretty much topped out? No, we don't even know what's on the horizon. I mean, you look at, what's happened just in the last 10 years, just in the technology sector. 10 years ago, who would have thought you'd have an iPad, okay? 15 years ago, who would have thought you'd have an iPod? When I was coming up, I can still remember 8-track tape players in the car. Anybody remember an 8-track tape player? It goes to show you how old I am. Those big things, and then they finally got replaced with cassette tapes. And then the cassette tapes got replaced with CDs. Now they're saying within the next 3 years, you won't even be able to buy CDs anymore, pre-recorded. They won't exist because everything is MP3, everything is, on iPods, and so on. So you can't say innovation is dead. We kind of become very complacent with innovation. I think it's because we have such a high expectation of new innovative products coming out every year, we don't even give it a second thought, okay? But 20 years ago, if somebody told you you could put 4,000 songs on a unit that big, they'd say, what are you, crazy? Okay? So that's innovation. Just some examples, okay? Porter, another guy we always have to look at, formulating innovation. We have product innovation and process innovation. The product, the process. Again, this is not on your exam, but it is in your book. So, according to Porter, product innovation, you have to achieve code compliance, and code compliance normally is set by government regulation. You may have to have fire code, electrical code, environmental code compliance, and so on. We have to win customers from substitutes. We have customer product education, so we have to educate our customers on the products that we're manufacturing. Infrastructure development, very important for innovation, and that's the service side of our business. Development of complementary goods and services to match our new product. So if we come out with a new product, what other products can we manufacture that complement it? If we come out with an operating system, then the complementary product to the operating system would be software. That's the complement. Okay. On the process innovation, we look at gaining regulatory approvals from the government, establishing reliability of new process, and making more investments in our infrastructure. Okay. Again, Porter, not on the exam. Don't lose sleep over this slide. It's just in your material for reference. Different market settings. We have efficient markets, trading markets, production markets. What is an efficient market? Has anybody ever heard that term, a market that's efficient? Didn't you guys have marketing? Yeah. Well, basically, though, an efficient market is so well developed that there's no competitive advantage left. To some degree, oil and gas sector is an efficient market. Okay? What's that? Level of competitors? Yeah. Yeah, they're pretty much the same. Okay? So there's not a lot of competitive advantage in an efficient market. So there are many buyers and sellers, okay? There is no differentiation of product. There is no barrier to entry or exit, and there's a free flow of information going on. We see that in telecommunications, okay? We see that in oil and gas. If I want to open up a gas station, as an example, if I'm in the United States and I want to open up a gas station, there's not a lot of barriers there, except, being able to come up with enough cash to do it. There's really no differentiation. I can't say, oh, buy my gas, it smells better. No, that's not going to work, okay? I can't say my gas will give you more mileage. So there's not a lot of differentiation of that product. There are definitely many buyers and many sellers, and it's pretty much a free flow of information. There's no real confidential information going around in the oil and gas sector, okay? So that's what they're talking about. It's an efficient market. It's efficient. It's self-sustaining, not a lot of competition, not a lot of competitive advantage of one. There's really no real solid competitive advantage between BP and Shell, for example. It's not, there's not a lot. Okay, they both make money because they both sell a product that's in demand, okay? And if oil and gas were to be replaced tomorrow, you'd have a real issue. Those companies, where would they differentiate? How would they, segment a market? Because that's what they do, okay? Now, we look at trading markets. They are superior access to information. They have low transaction costs. They're based on behaviors and overreacting to new information. Trading markets are like stock market, okay? What do they sell in a stock market? They sell gold, they sell silver, they sell different minerals, they sell stocks, and so on. Commodities. That's a trading market. And they are regulated by what we call behaviors, okay? What does that mean, overreacting to new information? Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. Whether that information is real, imagined, or whether it really will have an impact doesn't make any difference. And you're exactly right. If you look at if I'm trading in oil and gas futures, all right? As soon as the news comes out that there's bad news in the Persian Gulf, Iran is threatening to block the Straits of Hormuz. What happens to the market? Boom. Oil and gas immediately goes up. Okay? Overreacts to new information. And that's before anything even happens. Okay? When the where was it? When the Somali pirates were what do you call it? Pirating oil tankers, price of gasoline immediately went up. Okay? There was practically no impact in reality on supply, but just the information, the news, there's an overreaction in the markets, okay? So that's what they're talking about in trading markets. The last one, of course, is production markets, where most of us are fairly familiar. So there you have leveraging of both resources or inputs and throughputs, because resources are not just the material we buy. Resources are also our intellectual knowledge, the skills of our employees, and so on. So we leverage that for competitive advantage. Substitution through alternative resources, technology, and business models, all that's part of a production market, okay? So it's just different market settings. Again, not on your exam. People are probably saying, what is on the exam? See, you get 5 points just to put your name on the exam. No, I'm not kidding. Not really. This you've probably seen before, except it's in a different mode. The evolutionary cycle of a business. Usually we have it on a curve, okay? I tried to draw that curve freehand on a PowerPoint, and I couldn't do it. So I had to do it this way. So when a business starts, that's introduction. That's the low end of the cycle. Introduction, startup, whatever you want to call it. If a business usually gets past about 2 to 3 years of introduction period, usually the survival rate of that business increases dramatically if it gets past the first 3 years. If you ever open a business, if you get to 3 years, your chances of survival increase exponentially. Okay? So the next phase is growth. So that's kind of the line that goes straight up in the air. Growth phase of a business. Once you've, and keep in mind, the growth phase can be very long or short. It just depends on the business, the products, the service. All right? So once you start to top out of the growth phase, it starts to level off. And what do we call that? Maturity. We've heard the term a mature product. Did you cover that in your marketing class? Oh, they did cover one thing. Okay. So you have a mature product, or in this case, a mature business. The irony here is this particular model is used in both business life cycle and product life cycle. It's the same thing. Obviously, the product life cycle is shorter than the business cycle, okay, hopefully. So once you've hit the maturity phase, what's left? You know, if you don't extend your maturity phase, and unfortunately I don't have a clipboard here, a writing board. So at the maturity level, that's where most companies do something to extend that maturity curve as long as they can. And what is that? Yeah. But what do? One word. Innovation, but what's the word I'm looking for? Change. I knew it was on the tip of your tongue. That's when many organizations really start pushing change. Because now they may change product, they may improve product, they may change process, but the critical element for a company to extend the maturity curve and avoid decline, that's where you see a lot of new change processes coming in. Now, it doesn't mean there's no changes in the growth side, but the majority of organizations start changing in the maturity, right towards the cusp of the maturity curve, because they want to prevent dropping off the cliff. And they do the same thing with products, okay? So how do I change a product to extend its maturity curve? And I don't want the product to go into decline. That's where you use two important core business functions in your company. Yes? Yes. That is correct. How'd you know that? You were in one of my other classes. That's true. Those are the two critical components. In order to implement product change, number one, I have to realize where the product is in the life cycle, where it's being marketed. So who do I get that information from? From marketing. And I realize that now I have to improve or differentiate. Another word, I have to differentiate that product. Make it more unique, more innovative, okay? Because I want to extend the maturity cycle. And how do I make it more innovative? How do I change it? That's where I have to call on research and development. So marketing works with research and development. Research and development comes out with a new and improved, whatever the product is. It's new and improved. A common product that always comes to mind is Tide laundry detergent. Tide laundry detergent is probably one of the more mature products you'll find on the market. Anybody know how long it's been around? Nobody's been. That even precedes me in birth. Okay, so yes, it was made in 1862. No, Tide has been around probably since about at least the 40s, the 1940s. My mother used Tide. Okay, I remember it when I was a kid. So how has Tide stayed, and they sell it today. They sell it here. They're selling it globally now, okay? It's a very popular laundry detergent. How has it maintained its maturity curve? Because every so many years they come out with new and improved Tide, okay? What? New and improved. It's a marketing gimmick. New and improved. Reformulated, okay? Now has cleaning crystals, makes your whites whiter and your other clothes brighter, all right? These are all marketing gimmicks that are used together with R&D to extend the maturity cycle of the product. And companies do the same thing. To maintain the maturity curve, companies have to start to implement change processes internally. How they do things, how they act with their suppliers, how they act with their outputs, okay? That's all part of the change issue. So if they don't do that, ultimately, companies go off the cliff into decline. Singer sewing machines. They didn't change, they went off the cliff. Xerox, IBM. You know, IBM was the leader, the worldwide leader. But they became so arrogant they wouldn't change. What happened to them? Now their computers are called what? Lenovo. Yeah. Okay. So those are all examples. There's many companies. You know, and some of them are maybe in business 100 years, some may be 50 years, some may only be around for 10 years. Look at all the dot-com companies. You know, they burn themselves out very quickly, very quickly. They quick startup, quick growth. They never even really hit the maturity cycle. They kind of went off the cliff before they even got mature, okay? So that is the evolutionary business cycle. Everybody kind of understand that? Yeah, it's not a hard concept. The different levels of strategy, there are corporate, business, functional, network, and global. Those are the 5 levels of strategy, okay? And we will take each one in the rest of this course. We'll look at them. Corporate level strategy is selection of businesses in which the company should compete and the development and coordination of the selected businesses. So at the corporate level, those people that sit in those ivory towers, sitting there smoking big cigars, drinking fine wine, those are the guys, those high-level executives, those overpaid executives up there. They're the people that decide what business are we going to be in. In other words, if I'm in General Electric's corporate office, what divisions of General Electric are we going to be involved in, okay? And they're very diverse. Each business is different. They have a financial division. They have aircraft motors division. They have medical imaging equipment division. They have a plastics division. They have a finance division. They have a nuclear division. Very diversified products. And who makes the decision which businesses they're going to buy and which businesses they're going to get rid of? That's usually done at the corporate level. Okay? Everybody see that? But who runs those businesses? They're run at the business level. That's called what? What? Yeah. Yeah. It's called decentralization. I mean, it's called a lot of things, but that's part of decentralization, okay? Corporate basically pushes that authority down to each division so that each division runs itself. And the reason for that, you can't have a one-size-fits-all policy from corporate that is going to work across all those different business lines. This is the painful lesson that many companies have had to learn over the past 20 years. You can't control all of these diverse businesses with a one-size-fits-all policy. So I can't have a VP of marketing sitting in the corporate office deciding what the marketing strategy is going to be for each one of those businesses. It ain't going to work. Why? Because each business has to have its own differentiated market strategy. Because what works for one business may not work from a marketing standpoint for another business. Okay? And we'll get into that when we look at the business level strategy. So, critical strategic issues at the corporate level may include: what is the mission and the vision of our company? What businesses should we be in? What divisional businesses should we be in? Where and how should the boundaries of the company be drawn? And why and how should the company diversify? So those are all kind of the upper echelon questions that those cigar-smoking, wine-sipping executives have to make. Okay? How should the company allocate its resources among various types of business? So again, what kind of resources are we going to allocate out to all of our different divisions? Okay? What kind of resources? What kind of money? What kind of budgets? And once all that's done, then the business level strategy kicks in, and each company has to plan their own course. So these guys set the framework. Business level divisions, they do the actual process and implementation for their own groups. So, types of corporate level strategy. These are sometimes called grand strategies. There's aggressive, there's maintenance, and there's retrenchment.